Hi there and welcome to Central Texas Gardener. I'm Tom Spencer. Before we head to the nursery, it's important to get ready for our new edible and ornamental plants. Today, Dick Pierce from the Austin Permaculture Guild explains the organic techniques that promote a healthy garden. On tour, let's see how local designers renovated an old space for this old house.
Hi, I'm Roger Cook from This Old House.
Central Texas Gardener met up with Roger when he came to Austin for the This Old House Austin project. For months, homeowners Michelle Grieshopper and Michael Klug and Michael's two sons shared their home renovation with This Old House.
Action, please. Hey, Bill Moore, say hello to Tom Silva.
Hey, Bill. Nice to meet you.
Welcome to Austin.
Local builder Bill Moore used green building techniques and materials to expand and update the 1920s bungalow.
Green building is a concept that's growing across the country. And since Austin has been the hotbed or really the center of the movement for so many years, we thought this would be a great place to focus our efforts for this particular project.
The eco-responsible renovation extended to the garden.
The building is part of the landscape, and so you cannot ignore one for the other.
It's the name of the game. You're going green in the house, you ought to do it right outside the house. So you cut down on the amount of water, the amount of fertilizer, and the amount of maintenance and time you're putting into the areas.
There's also a maintenance aspect. The more of a native garden you have, the more natural it is to and adaptive it is to the climate and the conditions that are, part of life here in Central Texas.
Austin landscape designer Adams Kirkpatrick connected with their goals.
Adams, what was your inspiration for the design of this garden?
To show off as many beautiful native Texas plants as possible.
But before installing plants, local landscape contractor Russell Womack and Adams had a lot of work to do.
We had way too much soil. It was really built up around the house.
Years of top-dressing black gumbo with sandy loam had created problems.
The black gumbo really retains the moisture a lot, and they were having problems with the home shifting. So we really had to address the drainage flow, around the house primarily, before doing any of the landscaping.
Next, they took out invasive plants like nandina and waxleaf ligustrum.
We want to preserve the ecosystems around Austin. We want to keep them as natural and hopefully as native as we can.
But Michelle was attached to an ancient ligustrum until she learned how its bird-spread seeds choke out native plants.
Because the metal roof is new, we got to see firsthand the kind of results, of having the birds eat the berries and what they can do by depositing those in not just the local area of where they eat the berries, but I'm sure that these can be deposited everywhere. So we took it out.
And it made a huge difference getting those out of the way and then giving yourself a clean slate to plant with.
It really brightened up the area. It opened up the house.
Cleanup uncovered valuable plants like cherry laurel and Texas redbud. They kept the shade trees, despite the problems in being planted too close to the house years ago.
I'm told they're pecans, but actually I thought they're pecans, but I don't want to argue with people over that.
For years, my mother told me to get rid of this pecan tree because it was tearing up the porch, but I told her I'd rather get rid of the porch than this fabulous pecan tree. These are just absolute treasures. Love this tree.
The compromise? Repairing the porch, since the old tree has many summer stories to tell. But they replaced the invasives, mainly with natives along with others, to attract wildlife and add texture.
They're all slow growing, so they're not going to require, just enormous amounts of maintenance.
I have a black thumb, so for me, having things that can pretty much take care of themselves is very important. But Michael and the kids love to spend time in the garden, so we wanted enough variety of native plants that there could be, some puttering in the garden, but also, again, this low maintenance aspect.
They also broke up homogeneous lines with different forms to complement the house.
The bungalow could stand alone by itself, so all we're doing is doing some nice little window dressing to it. We're not trying to hide it or decorate it too much. We just want to accent what we've already have here.
But they wanted to avoid past mistakes.
We left a gigantic space in between the plants and the house.
Yeah, we want these to grow in so that they have about 2 feet at the when they're fully grown between the house and the plants, so that there's no vapor barrier. Otherwise, these plants are going to trap a lot of moisture against the house and they rot out the wood.
They also created space and privacy between the corner lot and the street with their plant and fence design.
Because it's an open fence, it doesn't create that solid barrier. It's just enough to give you separation from the street. I like the idea of adding the fence just for the separation piece for it. But then inside it, they added these curved lines with a limestone to separate the lawn from the plantings, and I like that too. And some of the things they did, like bringing planting all the way out to the street on the corner, kind of makes the yard feel like it's bigger than it is and makes it part of the neighborhood.
In a side yard, Adams addressed shade and mud.
Nothing really grows over there, so we knew we couldn't go in and put grass.
Michael's boys inspired a cove design with clumping timber bamboo and bamboo muley.
My boys, Sam and David, they're teenager, borderline teenagers, I guess, and you know, forever they've been very interested in gardening. I think it's somewhat genetic. I grew up on a vegetable farm in Colorado, so there's a little bit of that. But they are, I think they're kind of unique. They spend their allowance money many times on plants. We've set aside some portions of the yard for them to make contributions to, and I think that's, you know, that lets them take ownership in the space as well.
The idea in that area was to just create a space where the boys could sort of make some decisions on their own as well. They can come in and tend that area. They're going to help us plant that area. They're very excited about helping us with that. And then over time they can see the bamboo growing, and it's their favorite plant.
Adams and Russell chose sustainable pine straw mulch, partly for its look, but mainly because in a gully washer it won't float away. To catch the rain, Innovative Water Solutions installed a 1,200-gallon collection system. The philosophy behind a good and eco-friendly garden works anywhere, even for people who can't pronounce pecan.
And it's the same ideas, accenting points with accent plants, putting in borders, the idea of when you plant, start high and work your way down low and do your nice color bands on the front, curves to make things flow. The same ideas pertain, it's just learning a new palette of plants.
We're going to move from this old house to brave new gardens right now. We're going to be talking about permaculture, a concept that I think you're going to be very interested in. I'm joined by Dick Pierce with the Austin Permaculture Guild. First off, welcome to Central Texas Gardener.
Well, thank you so much, Tom.
It's been
Pleasure.
a few years since I've talked about permaculture with anybody, and I want to start off with just the basics. Tell us what permaculture is.
Permaculture, if it were coined today instead of in the 70s when it was, by an Australian named Bill Mollison, it would sustainability and green. Really, but to give you just a quick definition, Mollison always called it is designing sustainable human settlements, primarily with the palette or template of nature in mind. Nature is the great designer. Observation of nature as to how you learn how to design, and design also means live. Right? You don't have to design something from scratch. It's how you live your daily life, and it's based on nature, and it's started out as permanent agriculture, which fits your program very well, and you could say that was sustainable agriculture.
Exactly.
It rapidly expanded to be permanent culture. And that would be sustainable culture, which is our buildings, our energy, our food, our gardening, our exercise, and our health. All come under that umbrella now. But mainly, in what I think of sustainability is simply leaving things, having a bountiful, joyous life, but leaving things better than we found it.
Yeah, and you know, when you reference this, and I think that's the perfect way, is to kind of look to nature to lead the way. And what this means in a garden context for permaculture is organic gardening techniques.
Correct.
Close attention to the cycles of the season, where the sun is in the sky, those kinds of questions. And it really is commonsensical to me. Are there basic tenets in relationship to permaculture in the garden that you try to stick to?
Yes, there are, and you just mentioned a few of those. One of the biggest things is to is to observe your local place. So probably the biggest single word in permaculture is local.
Of course,
and
yeah.
probably except for you and I, the only things ever written about Austin as a local area are very, very few. And most of the stuff that you would get from various places doesn't talk about our growing season. Central Texas doesn't talk about our soil, which is heavy clay and is alkaline, where most of the world is acid and sandy. We're sitting here at the start of a wonderful growing season that the rest of the world has no clue.
That's right.
The 14th of January, we should be planting onions. And in rapid succession, we should plant all our vegetables in a lot in January and February and finish up in March so that we can take advantage of the cooler weather and the nicer, less vicious sun and kind of finish up in May. So a great deal of permaculture is observation of your local area. And the indigenous people have a simple word for it, that's to get to know your place.
Exactly.
And so a lot of it is just tuning up our observation skills, and we can supplement those with the Master Gardener planting guide, for instance, that will not only tell us when to plant, which starts in January, early January, and then but what to plant so that we can have short enough growing season on our tomatoes and other vegetables that we can have a bountiful harvest by, say, the middle or end of May, when we all ought to be planning to put our gardens more or less to bed for the vicious summer that we have here.
Absolutely. Now, you tell me about the activities of the Guild, because I know that you have a wide range of opportunities for people to plug in to the activities.
Well, we have, thanks for asking that. We, first of all, start out with a very simple listserv, which is austinperm at yahoogroups.com. Very nice, simple, easy going chat room, a listserv that about 400 local, 400 or 500 local members. So that's really easy to get going on that, and then do that as much as you'd like. Then that we have for free that starts up in the middle of January is we have every Wednesday night we have a permaculture related talk, and it's called the Winter Series of Talks, which has now been going for 4 or 5 years. And we talk about a lot of areas of permaculture and food and housing and attitudes and even finances in a permaculture sense, natural sense. So it's really natural science and living kinder and more sustainably with our resources. That's on Wednesday nights, and is usually at Habitat. It's at Habitat Suites Hotel, which is a permaculture hotel.
That's great.
You can stop by and get a brochure that shows the 300 different features they've got in that hotel that are permaculture-like and energy saving. Then we're excited that January is here, and that's the start of the gardening season. It's really the kickoff of the 2009 permaculture season. And this year, for the first time, we're going to have, starting in January, on January 15th, is the first homeschool class. We're going to run a semester-long class on Thursdays, permaculture design class for high school age homeschoolers. And we're going to run that in East Austin, and we're really excited about that.
And is this related to your Citizen Gardener program?
No, that's separate, and thank you for bringing it up, because
this
that's
sounds like
exciting,
a wonderful concept.
The Citizen Gardener starts on 2 Saturday mornings, January 10th and January 17th, and we'll have an evening session in the middle. But we just get together and do it, because it's planting time, and we put up the beds, and we've just recently had a graduation of the first group of over 30 folks that have to do 10 hours. They do 10 hours of classroom time, which we give them, if they'll pledge 10 hours of volunteer time in the community. And it's just been marvelous to see what these people have done on their own, and just love gardening in Austin and have such a great time, where Austin gardening was daunting to them before, or it had never worked. And also to get involved with a lot of the nonprofits that do gardening effort in the community gardens around town, to work under a mentor for 10 hours, and some of the results have just been astounding. It's been so much fun. And that's the 10th and the 17th, and that website is citizengardener.ning. I've never seen that before, ning.com.
Okay.
And that the enrollment information is on there, and it's a great class and great fun. And the idea of that is to work on getting everybody to work on increasing the local food supply in Austin.
Absolutely. And to me, that's an important growing concern, is food security, and making sure that we have access to fresh, locally produced produce. Now, I want to jump in here, thinking about the season ahead. How can permaculture, say you're talking to an average Austin gardener, how would adapting permaculture techniques into their spring garden help them with their harvest and what they could expect?
Well, one of permaculture's 12 or so design principles is small scale and intensive. And the Bible of that is simply the Travis Gardner Master Gardener book that'll tell you what to plant and when and what variety. And then square foot gardening, or John Jevons' more complicated book, but I recommend just the square foot gardening, which is intensive planting. And keep it small. A 4x4 garden bed gives you 16 little plots to plant, in which, for instance, in one of those plots next week you could put in 16 onions in a square foot, or 16 carrots. Right? The only thing is get piggy or tomatoes, which take a whole 4 square feet.
Right.
But then I put those in a bucket, and a big bucket, and then I can move them in and out of the sun and shade as I need to in Austin, because the tomatoes love the sun would love the sun this time of year, and would hate it come May. So one is to start small and plant intensively. And John Jevons maintains that, and you can double this if you want to, but that 100 to 200 square feet of garden is enough vegetables for a family of 4.
Right.
So you start small, right, and you plant intensively, and that's what we teach. So that's one. The other one is to do a lot of composting and mulching and have our ground covered so that we don't lose our precious moisture, and we don't have our vicious sun come down and evaporate the moisture or take away the organic material or carbon.
Real briefly, what's the next opportunity for people to plug in and attend a class?
Well, the class is the homeschooling in January. That's on our website. And also, we start a new design class on January 31st, the weekend of January 31st and February 1st, which is, and that will be a 10-day, 8-week course, and everybody does their own design, which is very exciting.
All right, very good. Well, I know people will want to look you up on the web, and I'm sure the website is up on the screen right now. People can check that out and visit you online. That's a great way to, as you indicated at the beginning of our conversation, to plug in and get going. But thank you so much, Dick, for being a part of Central Texas Gardener, and happy gardening this spring.
Well, we appreciate it. It's nice to be here at the start of the gardening season.
All right, thanks, Dick. And coming up next, it's our friend Skip Richter.
Hello and welcome to Down to Earth. This week's question is, what are the best shade trees to plant in the landscape? This is a time of year when a lot of people are out there planting new trees. Perhaps you've got an area that you'd really like to be a beautiful shade tree covering a patio or some other structure in the landscape where that shade would come in handy. Well, there's a number of ones that we can plant, and you do want to choose carefully because not all trees do well in this area. Elms do well in general. The lace elm, lace bark elm, is a really beautiful tree. The bark is attractive. It makes a large spreading tree that casts a light shade. I like it a lot, and I think you'll find it to be a good, acceptable shade tree for your landscape. If you've got a very marginal soil, some of these rocky, shallow soils or very droughty areas, cedar elm is especially good. Now, it'll grow in nice soil, but it's one of the trees that can take about the worst soils that our area can give and still do quite well, and it has a nice golden fall color. Among the oaks, there's so many great ones to plant. One of my favorite is Monterey oak. A Mexican white oak is another name for it. It's a beautiful, fast-growing oak. It grows quite well, quite fast, but yet it lives a long time. It's a good quality tree for our area, not so prone to some of the leaf diseases that some of the other oaks are. The red oak that's native to our area is a good choice. Try to choose the hill country red oak, especially the escarpment area native that grows so well here. If you're going to go into the larger or deeper soils rather of the eastern part of the area, you can choose Shumard red oak. That's another one that's commonly available on the market. It does better in the eastern parts of the state, but grows quite well here as long as the soil depth is good. And finally, there's lacy oak. Lacy oak is a blue-leafed oak that doesn't get that large. It's resistant to oak wilt, being a white oak group plant, but it's very good in the landscape, especially if you don't have a lot of area for an oak tree. Extremely tough, very drought resilient, and a good choice. Eve's Necklace is our featured plant this week. Eve's Necklace is a blooming tree that's about 20 feet in size at its maximum size. Generally, you see them a little smaller than that. Eve's Necklace is related to Texas mountain laurel. It produces white blooms in the spring. Those blooms are followed by little black seeds that look sort of like they're strung on beads along a necklace, and hence the name. It's extremely tough, it's extremely hardy, it's not prone to deer problems, although they'll nibble a little bit on it, but not particularly prone to them, and there's no disease or insects that we've been dealing with on this tree here in the central Texas area. Eve's Necklace is an excellent choice to look for. Out in the garden, it's time to prune those woody plants. Spring is coming, and the sooner you get that done, the better off they'll be. By pruning now, as we enter spring, the fast growth period, they'll have the most time to get ready and heal those wounds over after the pruning process. If you've got any soil amending to do before planting, get that compost out and turned under quick. For more plant tips or to contact the Extension office in your county, visit klru.org/CTG.
Thanks, Skip. Now let's check in with John Dromgoole for Backyard Basics.
Hello, gardening friends. You know, when we are fertilizing in the yard, we use a little nitrogen, we use a little phosphorus, we use a little potassium, there's calcium in our soil. But that's not enough. That's not a balanced fertilizer at all. And sometimes the nutrients aren't picked up out of the soil, the micronutrients I'm talking about. They're locked up in the soil, pH will do that, other things. And so in order to supply these essential nutrients, we need a little kelp. A little kelp comes from the ocean. Around Norway, where these things are harvested, it's done in a sustainable way. And that means they're harvesting it off of the beach sometimes. When the high tide comes in and brings the kelp to the shore, then the tides go out, they go out and harvest it right off the shore. Another way that they do it is to go out and cut it, just like mowing. It's done under the water, but the kelp grows back again. And then in a few weeks or a couple of months, they go back in there and they can cut it, and it keeps coming back up. So it's a very sustainable way of harvesting this kind of a product. And the kelp that comes from Norway is some of the best in the world. It comes from the cool waters. The glaciers up there empty minerals down into the fjords, and these things are cleaned in the fjords. You know, so it's a very sustainable product to use, and it complements the fertilizing program, and that's very, very important. What it can do is chelate nutrients in the soil. That's one of the characteristics of it. And when it chelates these essential nutrients in the soil, the plants can pick them back up again. And the seaweed supplies it too. So when we use seaweed out in the garden, we're trying to get these micronutrients into the plant very quickly. So one of the things we do is we'll take a sprayer and put it into a fine mist and spray it onto the foliage of the plants. You can do this with some frequency. Weekly is fine. A couple of weeks is also very good. And you know, as we go into the drought periods, the seaweed helps the plants pick up more water. It has that ability to increase the vigor of the plant so that it is using its food better, and as the plant is hardier, it can use water better. And in droughty conditions, this is very, very important. High temperatures play another role, and so do cold temperatures. Both of these factors put stress on plants. In the seaweed, there are several types of hormones, cytokinins, auxins, gibberellins. These are very important also to the activities within the plant. And they stimulate roots, they stimulate nice, strong stems with the potassium that's in the seaweed, and more flowers. More flowers means more fruits, and a prettier garden for you too. And some of the other things that seaweed will do, besides making the plant sturdy, and that's very important when we're going into these droughty conditions or these extreme temperatures. It also keeps them from getting stressed, because when they get stressed, here come the insects to do their job to get rid of the weaker species out there. So seaweed comes in many different forms. Here it is in a concentrate. This is what you'll find in the nurseries. Either this large container, which is a concentrate, or the smaller ones. They go a long way. You don't need great big ones. Today they've added a little iron to the seaweed to help complement it. And so these essential nutrients, of which there are over 60, are very, very important. You can also buy the seaweed in a soluble form right here. Instead of buying the seaweed with water, you can take this concentrate and save a lot of money, and you're not buying somebody's water that way. These concentrates, like these right here, are really the more economical way to use the seaweed. It also comes in this nice seaweed powder. This kelp right here can be fed to animals as a source of nutrients. You can work it into the soil, put it in your compost pile. This is a very, very nice way to work it into the garden. It's a little more expensive that way than when you use the liquid forms. There are many products that have them in them already. When they have fish emulsion or humic acids or other things in there, the seaweed is very important to help complement this type of a product. This is a very, very important way to garden in the summertime, in the spring. It keeps pests away. And if you've got red spider, by spraying under the foliage, you can get rid of the red spider. It's a real easy technique, and it stimulates roots, stimulates a strong plant, stimulates more flowers, and helps you take it through the drought. This is probably one of the most important things that we're facing around here these days, is the ability to make the plant, or help the plant actually, survive stressful conditions. And the plants are much sturdier, they're beautiful, and they're well balanced with these essential trace minerals. And this is really important to complement a fertilizer program. It's really one of the best additions that you can make in the garden out there. So this summer, this winter, or any time that you're out in the garden, I would certainly consider the use of seaweed as a supplemental way of having one of the prettiest, sturdiest, hardiest gardens that you've ever had. I'm John Dromgoole for Backyard Basics. I'll see you next week.
Visit klru.org/CTG for more tips, video, and our weekly blog. Next week, find out what's up with your trees. Until then, I'll see you in the garden. Visit klru.org/CTG to learn more about today's program, upcoming events, and to sign up for our electronic newsletter. Check out John's how-to tips and visit Trish's Corner for ideas inside and out. Get growing at klru.org/CTG.